After hearing the instructor, all the students reacted with excitement, noting that the ones who had won were from the East Wing. At the same time, Sandy expressed confusion about why their group was also being called together. Edge responded with a light chuckle, suggesting that perhaps they were about to receive some kind of explanation. Around them, most of the students stopped eating their delicious food and stared ahead in concern. In contrast, Zeke remained completely at ease, calmly continuing his meal. Noticing their reactions, Zeke pointed out that if they did not eat quickly, their food would get cold. His relaxed attitude left everyone stunned, though some began to chuckle at the situation. Leica then questioned how he could stay so calm in such a moment, and wondered about his lack of curiosity regarding what the instructor was about to explain. In response, Zeke loudly and confidently admitted that he was indeed curious. Hearing that, Leica smiled awkwardly, feeling slightly embarrassed as she acknowledged his answer. Shortly after, the instructor apologized for the delay and allowed everyone to continue eating, while also pointing out that someone had already started ahead of the rest. He encouraged the others to eat as well, explaining that the feast had been prepared as a reward for the strength shown by those who participated in the 66-lesson trials, specifically highlighting the achievement of reaching 86 strength. Upon hearing this praise, the students from the West team felt both happy and slightly shy. Then, the instructor announced that the time had come to explain the details of a special mission. At that moment, Edge respectfully asked if their group could also listen. The instructor responded with a smile, allowing it and mentioning that there was a possibility they might participate as well. The moment the announcement was heard, Edge was left completely stunned, the weight of the information settling heavily across the room. The instructor stood firmly, maintaining authority, and began explaining the situation referred to as does, drawing everyone's full attention. A few days earlier, a special crack had been discovered deep within the lands of the Eldragon family, a discovery that immediately caused shock and tension among those who heard it. As the word spread, everyone reacted with visible surprise, and even Zeke, who had been casually eating, stopped midway, abandoning his meal to listen carefully to the instructor's explanation. As he focused, Zeke recalled something from his past studies, thinking about how he had once read about cracks in a book stored within the Dragon Hall, and the memory now seemed far more relevant than ever before. The instructor continued speaking with calm seriousness, explaining that everyone present would already have some level of knowledge about cracks, as they were not entirely unfamiliar phenomena. However, he clarified that what they were dealing with now was something entirely different, something far more unusual, as they were probably not familiar with special cracks. He went on to explain that, in simple terms, these special cracks could not be conquered using normal methods, making them extremely dangerous and unpredictable compared to ordinary ones. This clarification deepened the tension among the students. Leica, unable to fully grasp the meaning, reacted with confusion, trying to understand what exactly made these cracks so different, and why they could not be handled in the usual way. The instructor responded by elaborating further, stating that the special crack discovered this time came with strict limitations, and those limitations were highly specific and unavoidable. Only 7 individuals with a 3-star level or lower were allowed to enter this crack, and this restriction was absolute. He emphasized that there was a 97% certainty that if anyone with 4 stars or more attempted to enter, or if the number of permitted individuals was exceeded, they would immediately be forced out by the crack itself. Hearing this, students from all directions, west, east, north, and south teams, listened intently, absorbing every word with serious expressions, fully aware of the gravity of the situation. The instructor continued, reinforcing the importance of these conditions, explaining that if the requirements were not met, not even the head of the family himself would be able to enter the special rift. This made it clear that no exceptions existed, regardless of status or power. Because of this, he stressed that accessing the crack required strict respect for these conditions, and any attempt to bypass them would be futile. Although there were indeed 3-star warriors among the Eldragon soldiers who could potentially qualify, the instructor explained that, due to the recent increase in the appearance of cracks, the family unfortunately did not have enough personnel to handle everything at once. It was precisely for this reason that their attention had turned toward the students, placing unexpected responsibility upon them. As the explanation deepened, the instructor revealed something even more significant, stating that within this special crack, there was a very high possibility that the magic water necessary to awaken magical power existed. The moment this was heard, shock spread once again through the group, the importance of the mission suddenly escalating to an entirely new level. Rick, confused yet curious, struggled to understand what exactly this magic water was. Zeke, however, reacted instantly, his thoughts aligning with what he already knew, realizing with certainty what the instructor was referring to. The instructor then clarified the concept, explaining that AGI was the key, and that by drinking the magic water, a person would gain the ability to convert ether into magic power. This transformation was essential, as it allowed the human body to properly handle and utilize magic. Upon hearing this, Zeke became overwhelmingly excited, unable to contain his joy. His eyes sparkled brightly with enthusiasm as he imagined the possibilities, his earlier seriousness replaced by pure excitement as he celebrated the idea of magic. The instructor continued, shifting the focus to the broader world, explaining that, as everyone already knew, the world was governed by the 8 families, known collectively as the 8 gates of the hegemonial, and among them was their own Eldragon family. However, despite being one of these powerful families, there was a crucial disadvantage that set Eldragon apart. While the other families possessed Lena, the magical fountain from which magic originates, the Eldragon family was the only one that did not possess such a source. Because of this absence, magic water held immense importance for them, representing a rare and valuable opportunity. Summarizing everything, the instructor clarified that the current mission was straightforward in its objective yet extremely critical in execution. They had to conquer the special crack and recover the magic water. It was a mission of utmost importance, one that carried immense weight and responsibility, and failure was not an option. However, there was an additional complication. The location where the crack had appeared was dangerously close to the territory of the Cerberus family, another of the 8 gates of the hegemonial. This meant that it was highly likely that the Cerberus family would also attempt to claim the crack for themselves, turning the situation into a potential conflict. Taking all these factors into account, the instructor concluded by explaining the purpose behind the selection tests. These tests were being conducted to identify and choose those individuals who were 3 stars or lower, yet possessed sufficient ability and strength to undertake this dangerous mission. The room remained heavy with anticipation as the full scope of the challenge settled in, connecting every detail into a single, high-stakes objective that now rested on the shoulders of the chosen few. As the instructor's explanation settled in, Edge quietly processed everything before turning towards Sandy, expressing his understanding of the situation with a calm realization. From what he had grasped, it seemed clear to him that the 7 members from the East Wing who had won would be the ones placed in charge of the special Rift Conquest mission. Hearing this, Sandy responded with a subtle smile, acknowledging his conclusion. However, the instructor continued speaking, adding an important clarification. Although the results of the tests had declared the East Wing as victorious, this did not mean that the 7 selected members from the East Wing would automatically become the Conquest team. This distinction shifted the atmosphere once again, realizing that his assumption had not been entirely correct. Edge reacted with a mix of surprise and satisfaction, quietly pleased that he had at least partially understood the situation. Sandy, noticing this, let out a small chuckle. Then, with a sudden shift in intensity, the instructor forcefully placed his hand on the table, drawing everyone's attention back to him. He firmly declared that from this point onward, under the leadership of the East Wing, the Conquest team for the Special Rift would be formed. However, instead of being limited to a single group, the team would be chosen from among everyone present there. This announcement sent a wave of shock and unease through the room, leaving many students both terrified and confused about what was to come. The instructor continued, explaining the reasoning behind the earlier battles. The purpose of making everyone fight until the very end, regardless of victory or defeat, had been to observe and share the skills and characteristics of each individual's martial arts. Through this process, they were able to establish proper evaluation criteria for forming the most suitable Conquest team. Still, he admitted that there were some individuals who had not been able to fully demonstrate their true potential. After saying this, his gaze shifted directly toward Zeke, singling him out in front of everyone. With deliberate authority, he declared that Zeke would be the one to choose the members of the Conquest team. The sudden responsibility hit Zeke completely off guard, causing him to choke in surprise, with food nearly falling from his mouth as he struggled to process what had just been assigned to him. The instructor questioned his reaction, pointing out that there was no reason for such surprise, since Zeke was the representative of the East Wing. Zeke hesitated, trying to explain that it had not been something he had intended or expected. Feeling the pressure, he quickly turned toward Leica, attempting to push the responsibility onto her, and insisting that she should be the one to decide instead. Leica, completely unprepared for this, froze in shock, unable to respond immediately. Zeke, however, continued speaking in his usual unpredictable manner, acknowledging that his own participation in the mission was mandatory. Even so, he questioned whether this arrangement truly made sense. With a sudden shift in tone, he boldly declared that if he were allowed to choose freely, he would simply form a one-man Conquest team, taking on the entire mission by himself. This outrageous statement left Leica stunned, unable to comprehend what he was suggesting. She struggled to respond, pointing out that while it sounded absurd, knowing Zeke, it was not entirely impossible for him to attempt something like that. Zeke, seemingly pleased with her reaction, continued speaking in a scattered, yet confident manner, suggesting that she should consider the situation carefully, evaluate the top individuals, and use her own knowledge and judgment to make the decision. After a brief moment, he casually concluded that everything seemed fine, and decided to hand over the position of representative to Leica. The instructor, slightly taken aback, questioned whether Zeke was truly certain about this decision. He reminded him that leading the Conqueror team would bring him one step closer to becoming the next head of the family. Zeke responded without hesitation, casually stating that he had no intention of becoming the family head at all. This declaration shocked everyone in the room, with Veniel being particularly affected, unable to hide the surprise. Edge immediately questioned this statement, struggling to understand how someone could reject such a powerful position. Sandy also reacted with disbelief, wondering whether Zeke was actually serious. Leica, however, confirmed that he was being completely genuine in what he was saying. Zeke continued, explaining that such a position held no real value for him. What he considered important was pursuing his own path, his own goals, and his own business. Edge tried to reason with him, pointing out that if he were to rise to the position of family head, he would gain control over the entire Eldragon family and wield immense power. But Zeke dismissed the idea entirely, stating that he had no need for something like that. For him, there was only one true objective that mattered. He declared that the only thing he sought was the ultimate end of martial arts, the absolute pinnacle of strength and mastery. Hearing this, the entire room fell into stunned silence, as everyone turned their gaze towards Zeke, unable to ignore the intensity and conviction behind his words. Zeke's expression softened into a confident smile as he turned toward Leica, reassuring her not to worry about him. Instead, he shifted the focus entirely onto her, urging her to concentrate on the task at hand and choose the members she would take for the mission. Leica, still feeling the weight of the responsibility, slowly stood up. Despite the pressure, she gathered herself and accepted the role with determination. With a serious expression and a sense of duty, she prepared to announce her choices, ready to decide who would be part of the Conquest team. As the moment built, the scene smoothly shifted to another location, where the head of a powerful family sat in a commanding position. Beside him rested a terrifying two-headed wolf, radiating a menacing presence that added to the tension of the setting. The head remained calm, casually smoking, when an assistant approached and delivered urgent news. Upon hearing the report, the head reacted with sharp interest, questioning whether the information he had just received was truly accurate. The assistant confirmed without hesitation that a special crack had indeed been discovered within the forest of the abundant dog. A smirk slowly spread across the head's face as he processed the information, realizing that the Eldragon family, whom he referred to mockingly as lizards, had already begun making their move. However, his tone quickly shifted to irritation as he questioned why he was only learning about this development now. The atmosphere instantly grew tense, and everyone present became visibly nervous. The assistant, overwhelmed by fear, bowed deeply and apologized, explaining that they had been skillfully deceived, which caused the delay in discovering the crack. The head continued to smoke, his smirk returning as he reflected on recent events. He recalled hearing that the so-called lizards who had infiltrated the forest of the abundant dog had been behaving in a strangely provocative manner. Now everything made sense to him, and he acknowledged their plan as clever. Curiosity flickered in his expression as he wondered whether there was something particularly valuable or interesting about this special crack, judging by their actions. The assistant responded by explaining that it was highly likely that the crack contained Kaglia magical, something of great significance. Hearing this, the head calmly acknowledged the situation, realizing that it was no surprise the opposing side would want to obtain it at any cost. He then asked about the conditions required to enter the special crack. The assistant explained that the limit allowed only individuals of 3 stars or lower, with a restricted number of participants. The head reacted with a confident smirk, noting that such conditions did not seem especially difficult to meet. However, he also recognized that the opposing side had already taken the lead and would likely occupy all the available positions. The assistant added more information, explaining that the Eldragon side did not have enough capacity to send their trained soldiers. Instead, they were reportedly sending young trainees who had not yet reached higher ranks. This revelation surprised the head, who reacted with disbelief at the idea that they planned to conquer such an important crack with a group that had not even reached proper rank levels. The assistant, uncertain, asked what course of action they should take, suggesting whether they should immediately form a team of 3 stars or lower. The head considered the situation carefully, acknowledging that it was already too late to start forming such a team from scratch. However, he pointed out an important detail. When it came to special Lena cracks and such rare opportunities, there was no doubt that the heirs of the Eldragon family would also be involved. This realization shocked the assistant, who immediately understood the implications. The head then shifted his attention and asked how many deception bracelets remained in their possession. The assistant quickly recalled that there were approximately 4 left. A dangerous smirk formed on the head's face as he issued a decisive order. He declared that he did not care if all the bracelets were used, commanding the assistant to go and eliminate all those young trainees. The assistant hesitated, clearly shocked, questioning whether such a decision was truly appropriate given that they did not know when they would be able to acquire more deception bracelets. The head dismissed the concern without hesitation, stating that there was no point in being stingy with resources that would otherwise gather dust in storage. In his view, it was far more productive to use them all at once in a moment like this. As he continued speaking, his tone grew darker, almost amused, as he imagined the reaction of the Eldragon leader when faced with the consequences of such actions. With a sinister grin spreading across his face, he found the thought deeply satisfying, as if the outcome itself would bring him a twisted sense of reward. Zeke shifts his focus toward the companions he is about to leave behind, making it clear through his demeanor that they will not be spared from hardship. In his view, their current strength is far from sufficient, and improvement is not optional but necessary. Without hesitation, he throws them into an unforgiving training routine. The first exercise immediately sets the tone, as they are forced to perform push-ups while bearing the crushing weight of enormous boulders pressing down on their backs. The strain is overwhelming, yet Zeke offers no relief. The intensity escalates as Rangus and the others are driven into endurance training that borders on merciless. They are made to run at full speed, while dragging massive stones behind them. Their bodies push to their limits with every step. Rick and Marin observe the ordeal with visible dread, questioning whether such punishment is truly required. Their unease is met with a deceptively innocent expression from Zeke, whose almost playful look contrasts sharply with the brutality of the exercises. Understanding the futility of resistance, the group forces uneasy smiles and accepts the situation. They recognize that arguing would only make matters worse when Zeke has assumed the role of instructor. Satisfied with their compliance, Zeke acknowledges them with a subtle nod before moving on to the next stage of training. His attention turns to Raymond, the blonde shield user. Zeke introduces a new and intimidating tool, massive enchanted stones known as regeneration stones. These objects prepared in advance immediately confuse the group. Their purpose is not obvious at first glance. Zeke explains that these stones possess a dangerous characteristic. Any force applied to them is reflected back with amplified intensity, multiplied many times over. The explanation is accompanied by the memory of his own painful experience with such stones, reinforcing the seriousness of the situation. Despite the obvious risk, Zeke expresses confidence in his approach. He declares his intention to strike one of the stones, using nothing but physical strength, deliberately avoiding the use of source power. The announcement leaves his companion stunned. The idea appears reckless to the point of absurdity. Nonetheless, Zeke prepares himself with calm focus and delivers a clean, unenhanced punch to the stone. The observers are left in disbelief, unable to comprehend how he could attempt such a thing without protection. Zeke remains composed, fully aware that the returning force will be devastating. As expected, the stone releases an explosive surge of energy that rebounds toward him. The sheer magnitude of the impact suggests certain injury. Yet Zeke had anticipated this. Instead of absorbing the full force directly, he employs a basic shield to intercept the shockwave. The shield cracks under the strain, but it successfully demonstrates his point. This method, though risky, serves as a clear example for Raymond. The lesson focuses on mastering defensive techniques, either by enduring the impact head-on or redirecting it effectively. Raymond, realizing the difficulty of such training, feels a deep sense of pressure. Next, Zeke directs his attention to Selene. He hands her a sword and instructs her to attack the regeneration stone using her source power. She complies with determination, unleashing a rapid sequence of strikes. However, her attacks lack precision, landing across multiple points, rather than concentrating on a single target. As a result, the stone recovers almost instantly, negating her efforts. Zeke identifies the flaw immediately. Her strength is scattered rather than focused, allowing the stone's regenerative ability to outpace her attacks. He clarifies that her training will revolve around refining her focus, channeling all her energy into one precise point. To illustrate this principle, he demonstrates the technique himself. With a single, fluid motion, he delivers one perfectly concentrated strike. The impact penetrates the stone's core, causing cracks to spread across its entire surface. The display leaves Selene astonished. The precision and power achieved in a single blow surpass anything she had imagined. Zeke explains that her current style prioritizes rapid, numerous attacks, but advancing further requires a shift in mindset. Each strike must carry intention and accuracy, rather than relying on volume. Selene accepts this guidance with gratitude, understanding the path she must now follow. Zeke then turns to Rangus, who braces himself for another grueling challenge. Contrary to expectations, Zeke presents him with something unexpectedly simple, a delicate white feather. Despite its simplicity, the task proves far from easy. A swirling green aura of wind energy begins to form around the feather, immediately capturing Rangus's attention. The energy resembles a technique associated with a powerful figure, one that Rangus recognizes instantly. Zeke reveals that he learned to replicate this ability after experiencing it firsthand in battle. The explanation defies logic, leaving Rangus unable to comprehend how such a feat is possible. Ignoring the disbelief, Zeke proceeds to outline the objective. Rangus must learn to control the flow of wind with such precision that he can manipulate the feather without physical contact. To demonstrate, Zeke performs a seemingly impossible act. He balances the feather using controlled bursts of wind generated through his movements, maintaining its position with extraordinary accuracy. The challenge lies in the feather's lightness, which makes it extremely sensitive to even the slightest disturbance. Zeke explains that true mastery requires a shift in approach. Instead of attempting to dominate or control the wind forcefully, Rangus must learn to align himself with its natural flow. Through another demonstration, Zeke shows how subtle movements can create gentle currents capable of lifting and guiding the feather. The lesson emphasizes surrender rather than control, suggesting that true command over the element comes from understanding and harmony. Rangus struggles to grasp the concept, yet the depth of the technique leaves a strong impression on him. As the training session concludes, Zeke's composure reflects the confidence of someone who has already reached a higher level of mastery. His companions are left overwhelmed, each facing a daunting path of growth. Before they can fully process the experience, a voice calls out to Zeke, urging him to hurry. The reminder pulls him back to the present moment. With a brief farewell, Zeke entrusts his friends with their respective training tasks and departs to join the mission team. Rangus, shaken by the challenge ahead, begins to doubt his ability to succeed. However, support from his companions helps him regain his determination. The emotional weight of the moment transforms his uncertainty into resolve. Meanwhile, preparations for the mission are underway. A group of selected individuals gathers, forming an unconventional team composed of both allies and rivals. The lineup reflects a strategic decision, combining different strength to maximize their chances of success. Despite underlying tensions, the team moves forward with a shared objective. Elsewhere, discussions unfold regarding the mission's risks. Concerns arise about potential interference from rival forces, as well as the possibility of betrayal once the objective is achieved. Confidence in the team's abilities remains strong, particularly due to Zeke's presence. Observers note that his capabilities defy conventional evaluation, making him an unpredictable yet invaluable asset. Speculation about his origins intensifies as his abilities are compared to legendary techniques reserved for the highest authority within his lineage. The similarities are too significant to ignore, raising questions about how he could possess such knowledge without formal training. Investigations into his past reveal no clear explanation, deepening the mystery. The idea emerges that Zeke's talent may transcend ordinary understanding. Some consider the possibility that his abilities are tied to something far older and more profound. This theory, though difficult to accept, gains weight as more evidence aligns with it. The notion of reincarnation is quietly suggested, linking him to figures of immense historical significance. The revelation leaves a lasting impact on those who hear it. What initially seemed impossible begins to feel plausible in the face of Zeke's extraordinary feats. His presence alone challenges established beliefs about strength, talent, and legacy. The head observed everyone's reaction and noticed their growing nervousness, then dismissed the situation by calling it an absurd story. He reasoned that if the kid truly possessed that level of power, then wild dogs like those would be insignificant to him. The scene then transitioned smoothly to 1 week later, where all the instructors and students had gathered in a jungle. Freya appeared visibly worried as she asked about the whereabouts of the vice leader of the Black Dragon Squadron. An instructor hesitantly explained that when they realized the situation, the vice leader had already disappeared. The word disappeared lingered heavily in the air. Freya reacted with concern, recalling that they had promised to send more personnel, yet she remained unsure whether he would be safe. Her attention shifted as she noticed that others had just arrived. At that moment, Leica approached, with Zeke following behind her. Leica energetically spoke about running and moving along the fastest path, questioning how one could expend energy before the mission, and why instructor Freya was present there. Freya responded coldly, clarifying that she was no longer acting as their instructor, but was instead on a mission for the protection of the special domain. Leica realized they were dealing with a special domain, prompting Freya to explain that certain cracks could influence the outside world and create such domains, and that this was one of those cases. As Zeke listened, he observed the dark trees and felt a familiar energy, similar to the black mist that had emanated from the raging boar he had previously fought. He reflected that he had never considered that phenomenon to be an effect of a crack. Zeke questioned why Freya was protecting the special domain. Freya explained that her purpose was to contain and sabotage the Cerberus family. When Leica asked what sabotage meant, Freya elaborated that conquering the rift and obtaining the magic water would undoubtedly strengthen the Eldragon family, something their rivals would not welcome. Leica acknowledged this explanation, and Freya added that they also eliminated monsters expelled from the special domain. Among other duties, Zeke showed curiosity about the term expelled, prompting Freya to clarify that the entry limit for the special rift was restricted to 7 3-star individuals. Edge confirmed that he had heard the same. Freya then demonstrated by placing her hand on the domain barrier, explaining that those who did not meet the requirements, including herself, were expelled. She further clarified that monsters of 4 stars or higher were also excluded. Only those meeting the criteria could enter, and entry operated on a strict first-come, first-served basis. Once participants entered, no one else could join until the rift was conquered or completely cleared. Zeke placed his hand on the domain with ease. Surprising Freya, internally, he analyzed the barrier as something that selected participants, although it was said to be indestructible by force. The more he heard, the more he felt tempted to test it. His smirk made Freya uneasy, prompting her to remind him to listen carefully when others spoke. Zeke responded playfully, assuring her that he had been listening, though Freya immediately called out his lie. Freya then warned that they did not know when members of the Cerberus family might arrive, so they needed to proceed quickly. Turning to the students, she asked if they were ready. The group responded with determination that they were prepared. Freya wished them good luck in conquering the domain. The group entered the domain, and soon encountered a herd of massive deer with enormous antlers charging toward them. Veniel stepped forward, prepared to strike, and swiftly killed them all in a single attack. His companion praised his performance as magnificent, while Veniel quietly stared at his weapon. This moment triggered Edge's memory of an earlier encounter. He recalled secretly watching Zeke hand Veniel a weapon. Zeke had instructed him to take it, reminding him that he always followed through on his promises, including training him, since the mission would involve real combat. Zeke insisted that Veniel use the staff. Veniel questioned the decision, pointing out the importance of the mission and his lack of familiarity with the weapon. Zeke insisted anyway, frustrated. Veniel threw the weapon aside and refused, questioning why he should use something he did not understand. As Veniel walked away, Zeke used the weapon's aura from behind, releasing a powerful wind energy that shocked Veniel. Veniel questioned why Zeke was using wind energy. Zeke dismissed the concern and again urged him to use the weapon. Veniel initially refused, repeatedly saying no, while Zeke persistently insisted like a stubborn child. The exchange escalated until Veniel, exhausted, collapsed and finally accepted the weapon, admitting there was no reasoning with Zeke. Zeke then explained that, although there was no umbrella available, the cane served as a substitute with similar handling to a Lin Paragon. He declared that this time, Veniel would train specifically for that style. Veniel expressed doubt, pointing out his lack of basic knowledge or techniques. Zeke reassured him, claiming he had created a technique tailored specifically for him and revealed its name. The scene shifted back to the present, where Veniel reflected on the technique, known as the Phantom Wind Umbrella Technique. He found it hard to believe that Zeke could create a technique from scratch, yet he recognized that since adopting it, his movements had become sharper and perfectly aligned with his wind attribute. Edge observed this and wondered if Zeke had truly created a personalized technique. Zeke praised Veniel's last strike, while Veniel's companion confirmed that the technique had indeed been created by Zeke. She whispered in amazement, questioning who Zeke really was. Veniel, still frustrated, admitted he did not know. Meanwhile, Lyra approached Zeke with a smile and asked him directly whether he had created the technique. Zeke proudly confirmed that he had. Lyra reacted with surprise and excitement, clapping happily. Sandy, however, dismissed the claim as impossible. Edge countered that, considering Zeke, it somehow made sense. Sandy insisted that regardless of what others believed, she would not tolerate being obstructed, directing her frustration toward Veniel and his companion. Veniel reacted angrily, demanding clarification. Sandy arrogantly criticized him, claiming he could not fight properly without relying on poison, and was now using a technique he did not understand. Veniel and his companion snapped back, demanding respect and warning her about her language. Sandy retaliated, accusing them of being upset by the truth and belittling them further. Leica attempted to calm her, urging her not to get so angry. Edge stepped in with a laugh, trying to diffuse the tension by reminding everyone that they were partners in conquering the special rift and needed to cooperate. Sandy strongly objected, questioning how she could cooperate with those who had nearly killed Leica using poison. She declared her disagreement with the team selection. Edge and Leica tried to restrain her. Zeke then asked Lyra if she had any thoughts on the matter. Lyra responded indifferently, stating she did not care as long as she could participate in the mission. Zeke found her attitude amusing and praised her broad-mindedness. Sandy, still upset, questioned Leica's decision to include such individuals. Leica explained that, although she was not as pragmatic as Lyra, she recognized the outstanding skills of those individuals and believed they were necessary for the mission. Veniel's companion sarcastically remarked that at least the leader seemed sensible, unlike her older cousin. This provoked Sandy further, causing her to lash out again, only to be restrained by Edge, who tried to keep the mood light. Amid the tension, Leica expressed concern about whether the group would truly be able to function effectively. Zeke reflected internally that the aftermath of the selection test was still affecting them, preventing trust and cooperation. He noted that each member had their own unresolved thoughts, making the group unstable. He considered that if they could understand and accept each other, they might become trustworthy companions. Leica then drew everyone's attention to the crack ahead. Zeke reacted with excitement upon seeing an actual crack in space. Leica shifted into leadership mode, warning the group that they did not know what awaited them inside, and urging everyone to remain focused. The group steadied themselves with determination. Zeke stretched his arms and encouraged everyone to proceed. At that moment, he sensed someone entering the domain from behind and briefly looked back. When Lyra asked if something was wrong, Zeke dismissed it and urged the group to move forward immediately. With that, everyone focused their attention on the crack and prepared to enter together. Step by step, they move closer toward what seems to be the core of the anomaly, fully aware that whatever lies ahead may be their toughest challenge yet. As they cross into the heart of the domain, their caution proves justified almost instantly. The moment they enter, the situation spirals out of control. Panic erupts without warning. Leica is overcome with sheer terror, her reaction immediate and visceral. Edge's expression twists as fear takes hold, while Sandy is left stunned, struggling to process what's happening. The ground beneath them disappears as if it had never existed. In an instant, the entire group is plunged into open air, their bodies dropping rapidly through an endless sky. The sudden shift leaves no time to think. Leica tries to regain control of the situation, attempting to steady everyone mentally, and urging them to focus on finding a way to land safely. But events move faster than anyone can react. Out of nowhere, a massive bird descends with terrifying speed. Its presence is overwhelming, and before anyone can intervene, it snatches Zeke clean out of the air. The action is so sudden that it leaves the rest of the team helpless to respond. Sandy watches in horror as the scene unfolds, her attention torn between Zeke being carried away and Leica continuing to fall toward the forest far below. Zeke himself barely has time to comprehend what's happening. One moment he is falling alongside his team, and the next he is being hauled away through the sky. The sheer unpredictability of the situation leaves him momentarily stunned. Below, Leica desperately gestures toward the sky, her focus locked on Zeke as he disappears into the distance. Her concern for him is immediate and overwhelming, but Edges quickly forces her attention back to reality. He emphasizes the urgency of their own survival as the ground rushes closer with alarming speed. Faced with the inevitable, Leica braces herself for impact. Preparing for the worst, nearby, Vanel reacts with visible irritation, clearly unimpressed by the chaos surrounding him. He calls upon his attendant, Alan, and without hesitation, the two shift into action. Alan executes a newly mastered technique, channeling wind into a protective form reminiscent of an umbrella. At the same time, Vanel unleashes his own refined wind-based abilities. The combination of their techniques generates a powerful whirlwind beneath the falling group. The swirling air forms a cushioning barrier, slowing their descent and reducing the severity of the fall. The effect is immediate, the violent drop is softened, giving them a chance to survive what would have otherwise been a devastating impact. Edges manages to seize a sturdy tree branch at the last possible moment, narrowly avoiding a direct collision with the ground. Vanel and Alan land with precision, their control over the wind allowing them to touch down smoothly. The others are not as fortunate. Leica and Sandy hit the ground hard, the impact sending waves of pain through their bodies. Sandy voices her frustration at the rough landing, clearly shaken. Vanel, however, shows little sympathy, dismissing the situation with cold indifference. Edges steps in quickly, attempting to ease the tension by pointing out that without their intervention, the outcome would have been far worse. Leela slowly pushes herself upright, acknowledging the pain, but confirming that she is still able to continue. The group takes a moment to recover as Edges scans their surroundings. The environment is unfamiliar and unsettling, unlike anything they have encountered before. Recognizing the uncertainty ahead, he suggests they take advantage of the moment to recover, encouraging everyone to use healing resources while they can. With the immediate danger behind them, Leica turns her attention to Vanel and Alan. She expresses genuine gratitude for their actions, acknowledging that they saved the team from a far worse fate. The response she receives is distant. Vanel dismisses the thanks, framing his actions as a necessity for the mission, rather than an act of goodwill. Sandy reacts with mild frustration, wishing for at least a hint of acknowledgement. Alan then shifts the focus to a more pressing concern, Zeke's sudden disappearance. The question of what to do next hangs heavily over the group. Vanel's response is blunt, suggesting that they simply move on without him. This sparks curiosity, leading Leela to question whether he might actually be concerned despite his words. His reaction is immediate and defensive, denying any such feeling, though his demeanor suggests otherwise. Sandy observes this contradiction, noting his inability to be honest about his own thoughts. Surprisingly, Edges sides with Vanel's perspective, arguing that worrying about someone like Zeke may be unnecessary. This unexpected confidence catches Sandy off guard, prompting her to question how he can be so certain. Leica's agreement only deepens her confusion. Frustration builds as she tries to understand how the others perceive Zeke. In their minds, memories of his past actions surface, his relentless training, his intense presence, and his overwhelming strength. These recollections shape a shared conclusion among them. To them, Zeke is something far beyond ordinary. As this realization settles in, Sandy begins to question whether her own perception is the outlier. Edges brings the conversation back to the immediate problem, reminding everyone that regardless of their opinions, they still need to regroup with him. The challenge lies in figuring out where to begin. At this point, Leela offers a crucial piece of information. During their fall, she managed to catch sight of something unusual in the distance, a distinct pillar of light. While Alan expresses doubt that anyone could maintain awareness during such chaos, Leela remains confident. She indicates a specific direction within the dense forest, certain of what she saw. Her certainty surprises the group. When questioned, she explains that she briefly surveyed the surroundings mid-fall and committed the location to memory. The display of awareness earns admiration, particularly from Sandy, who is visibly impressed. Building on this information, Leica quickly and decisively forms a plan. She recalls that the bird carrying Zeke was heading in the same direction as the strange, glowing light. This connection provides them with a clear and immediate objective. Rather than wandering aimlessly through the unknown terrain, they decide to head toward the towering pillar of light, believing it may lead them closer to him. The group agrees without much hesitation, recognizing that Zeke himself would likely be drawn to something so unusual and mysterious. Meanwhile, far from the others, Zeke's situation unfolds in a completely different and far more perilous manner. Despite the circumstances, he appears surprisingly composed and observant. Rather than panicking, he reflects on the unexpected turn of events with a sense of curiosity and intrigue. Being seized by a massive creature, the very moment he entered the rift, is not something he had anticipated. Yet he treats it as a strangely novel experience. The encounter introduces him to something entirely new, an attack originating from another dimension. Even the sheer shock of it fails to unsettle him for long. Instead, he regards it as a rare opportunity to learn and adapt. Though separated from his team, he shows no real concern for their ability to manage without him. His confidence in them remains steady and unshaken. As the bird continues its long, powerful flight, its behavior suddenly shifts. The subtle change signals that their journey is nearing its end. Without warning or ceremony, the creature abruptly releases him. Zeke begins to fall once again, this time completely alone. Looking downward, he quickly understands exactly where he is headed. Below him sits a massive, crudely built nest perched precariously atop a jagged mountain peak. The structure is enormous, and within it are 3 large, restless chicks, each one eagerly awaiting food. Their attention locks onto him instantly. The young birds react with visible excitement, their anticipation unmistakable, as they prepare to receive what they perceive as their next meal. As Zeke descends rapidly toward them, the situation becomes painfully clear. He is the target, and to them, he is nothing more than food falling straight into their grasp.